Hope you love the channel and find it useful in becoming a happy retiree. Subscribe today. Karen, good morning. Welcome to Money Matters. What's going on? How can I help?
Thank you. I'm looking into guaranteed income annuities and trying to sift through all their caveats. I'm 58 years old and looking at starting the income when I'm 67. And I'm curious to know if you typically recommend COLAs, cost of living adjustments.
Well, of course. So let's talk a little bit about bigger picture what Karen's doing here. This guaranteed income annuity is a scenario where you agree to a certain amount, you put it down today. Effectively, then you are buying yourself an exact pension, if you will, that starts at a different age. In your case, in about 10 years, at age 67, and then there's a bell or whistle that you can also purchase on that same guaranteed income annuity that will also go up by that would make it so that your payment would go up by either the rate of inflation or some sort of percentage of the rate of inflation. So first of all, the question is really, what does it cost? What is the extra cost of the COLA increase, number one? And then two, we've got to go back to the fundamental question of why are you doing the annuity in the first place? And I know it's because you want income, but beyond that, is it part of your overall income picture? How big of a portion of your future retirement income is coming from this one source? So I asked you like 7 questions there. You can choose to pick one or two of them.
Probably about 50%. Would come from that.
Okay.
Yeah, about 50% of my income would be coming for that.
Got it.
It's a 2%. Basically the way I was looking at it, I wrote them all out year by year, and one has a 1% bonus. If I got that bonus every year, when would they catch up? And I think my concern is it's not a concern, but my mother is in her 90s and she's still going strong, so I do have longevity in my genes.
So what if you accidentally live a long time, right?
Right.
God forbid. And remember a couple of thoughts though on these annuities. Let me dig a little bit deeper. So let's say you obviously will have Social Security in your 60s. Do you have a pension too?
No.
Okay, so you don't have a pension.
So the only guaranteed thing I have is my Social Security.
So just social, got it. And then so it sounds like of your investment dollars, so of the total pie you have to put to work in something to produce income, are you saying about 50% of that would be going into this annuity?
No, about 30%.
Which is probably the very most you want to do, and it sounds like you've thought that through. Of course, if you're going to if you look at a pie chart and you look at all of your investment money, to do a third into any one thing, particularly a product like this, I would say definitely at the very maximum you want to do. So you're telling me, so why are you doing an annuity in the first place? You're doing it so that you're just getting a set guaranteed rate of return on, or a set income amount from a portion of your assets. I'm with you on that one. Number two, just and this, the annuity companies, I think there's this great thought that annuity companies have this special magic, like their annuity companies are wizards and they can figure out how to get you income forever, unlike you being able to do it on your own. They're not wizards. They're just actuaries. And they're not investing in anything that is different or anything more unique than what you could invest in on your own. So big annuity companies, you give them $100,000, they say, oh, we're going to pay you $1,200 a month or whatever it is in 10 years, or $2,500 a month. But they're just going to put that money into bonds. And the only problem with that is that the way I look at these annuity companies is that if I'm going to own bonds, and I believe in having bonds in your overall portfolio in your retirement for safety, for income, but I want to own 50 bonds or 100 bonds, not one bond. Right? And what you're doing by buying an annuity that is this one income source, that is essentially like buying one annuity is like buying one bond. Now, you can buy a super safe bond, you can buy a municipal bond or treasury bond, and you're still not worried about it if you go out of business. But I always have that underlying fear that something could happen to that company. And even if there's reinsurance and there's lots of other guarantees, you don't want to live through, and I saw this in, of course, the great financial crisis, Karen, you do not want to live through your annuity company going through financial trouble. So that is just something to consider about making sure you don't want to rely too heavily, because 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, the world can be a very, very different place. And who knows what happens to this particular annuity company in 20 some years from now, because you're still going to be dependent on this one company for this one income stream. So just, I want you to make sure you remember that and recognize that in this conversation. The question, though, I would say is, how much will it cost? And I don't know if this is an additional cost, or it's really just probably comes in the form of a slightly less starting income when you're 67. Is that how it works for this COLA increase?
Yes.
And can you give me the numbers? What does it cost to do this COLA increase? How much monthly income is it going to cost you?
What the difference when it starts?
Yes.
Okay, it's about $1,800.
$1,800
a month.
If you don't take the COLA, or you do take the COLA?
If I take the COLA, it's about $1,800 a month less.
Got it. So, $1,800.
And that's why I said the payments catch up when I'm about 80.
Okay, so you have to live to at least 80. And then,
and that was one of my thoughts, was to split it.
Meaning saying you do two different versions of the annuity. Half of the annuity gets the COLA, the other half doesn't.
Right.
You know, I very often default back to, when you're having a financial conversation about two paths, there's typically not a right answer and a wrong answer. They are just two different answers, and they might both work okay. And it's, in my opinion, this is one of those scenarios where you've got a fork in the road. Both of these scenarios work okay, because we also don't know where costs are. We've been in a period of time where inflation is very benign for the last 10, 15 years, really 20 years. And it looks as though it's hard to see a lot of inflation on the horizon because of technology and the world we live in. Things are, for them, except for healthcare and housing, things are getting cheaper. And in your case, when healthcare does matter, though. So we don't know. That's the biggest variable. As long as your house is paid off, when you're 80, Karen, you're going to be doing less. So life is deflationary from a spending perspective. So the cost of living, even though we think of it today in our 50s and our 60s, and we say, well, things seem a little bit, it's more expensive on discretionary things like going on trips and gasoline and an RV, or going on a trip to Europe. But when you get into retirement and you're in your 80s, you're doing a lot less of those discretionary things. So not that there's not inflation in the world, there's just not a lot of inflation in your life. In really, unless you're talking about healthcare. And at that point, we don't know where Medicare will be, because that program, I can tell you, is certainly has to readjust the numbers over the next 20 years. Today, if you have Medicare, you have been, now this doesn't count for long-term care facilities for the most part, and there actually is some of that. There actually is some relation to that. But from just purely a healthcare perspective, Medicare, if you have a Medicare supplement plan, it takes care of a vast majority of your healthcare costs. So again, the families I work with in their 80s and they're on Medicare, they haven't seen a massive increase in healthcare costs, because Medicare covers most of that, and they've got supplemental policy. So I'm to have a giant cut in income that's almost $2,000 a month just because you're going to do the COLA, it seems like a lot to me.
Okay.
Now, I haven't reviewed all of your numbers, and we're having kind of a higher level conversation on this, but that seems like a lot. So I think that your thought on having less, maybe you only do half of the COLA you split your annuity scenario in two. You have two payments. One's going to increase for COLA. The other one is not. That does start to make a little bit of sense to me. But
well,
I would just
said spread it out. How many is two enough? Would you go with 3 different companies? How many?
Yeah, again, that goes back to my question or my statement on, do you want to own one bond in retirement?
Because that does make sense.
Yeah, or do you want to own 50? No, you don't want to have 50 different annuities. That's too many. But you do want to have, in my opinion, yes, at least 2 or maybe even 3 if it's going to be, it sounds like what we're talking about here is a big chunk. I mean, what's your ultimate payment if you did this all in one company per month? $5,000 a month?
With a COLA or without the COLA?
Without the COLA.
Without the COLA, it's about $7,000.
Yeah, that's a big number. Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't do that with one company. No way. Okay. No way, okay. Karen. I'm glad we talked this through. I know it was a windy road to get where we were, but I think if you take anything away from this conversation, one, my main point, and I'm glad we talked this through, don't do such a large amount of monthly income with just one company. That to me would be nerve-wracking. To split it at least in 2 different companies, maybe even 3.
Okay.
Get the highest quality insurance companies you can find to do this. And I'd even consider maybe reducing some of that amount of your overall investment pie. 30% of all of your assets, a little high. But I am okay with the fundamental principle of saying, hey, I want an income stream. This portion of my income, maybe it's 20%, not 30%, is to some extent very stable. And you know what you're getting. I think to some extent that's a good thing. I've got to run, Karen, but thank you for listening to Money Matters and giving us a call.
Thank you. You've been a huge help.
Have a great rest of your Sunday. Hi, I'm Wes Moss, and thanks for taking a minute to hear about what's so different about my new book, You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think. So unlike other retirement books, this book will give you a step-by-step guide, whether you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, to learn from what these successful and happy retirees did to get there. I hope you enjoy the book, but more importantly, I know that it'll help you retire sooner than you think.